Every year, India waits for the monsoon with bated breath. Clouds building over the Indian subcontinent. Farmers watching the sky, waiting for the rains. These seasonal rains, sweeping across the subcontinent from June to September, are the very lifeblood of the nation. They replenish our rivers. They fill our reservoirs. They breathe life into the parched farmlands that feed over 1 billion people. The monsoon is a celebration of nature's bounty, a promise of prosperity and renewal. For millions of farmers, the first drops of rain signal the start of a new cycle of hope, a chance to sow their crops and secure their livelihoods for the year ahead. Without these rains, India's agricultural heart would simply stop beating. But this life-giving force has a darker, more destructive side. The same rains that nurture life can also unleash unimaginable fury. When the monsoon arrives with too much intensity, it transforms from a blessing into a curse. Rivers that once irrigated fields swell into raging torrents. The 2025 monsoon season served as a brutal reminder of this duality. The story of the monsoon in India often begins in the east, and in 2025, Assam once again found itself at the epicenter of the early deluge. For the people of Assam, floods are an annual ordeal, tied to the mighty Brahmaputra river. This year was no different. As the monsoon rains began in June, the Brahmaputra, the Barak River. The relentless downpour combined with poor drainage infrastructure created a perfect storm for catastrophic flooding. The waters rose steadily, inundating vast swathes of the state, turning fertile fields into vast, muddy lakes. By the time the first wave of floods peaked, the scale of the disaster was staggering. Official reports indicated that over 5.15 lakh people across 22 districts were directly affected. Homes were submerged, livestock was swept away, entire villages were cut off from the outside world. As the monsoon trough shifted westward, the deluge moved into the densely populated plains of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. As the monsoon trough shifted westward, the deluge moved into the densely populated plains of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. As the monsoon trough shifted westward, the deluge moved into the densely populated plains of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. As the monsoon trough shifted westward, the deluge moved into the densely populated plains of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. These states are crisscrossed by major river systems: Ganga, Gaghara, Kosi. This year, the situation was aggravated by heavy rainfall, not just within the states, but also in the upstream catchment areas in Nepal. This caused a massive influx of water, pushing rivers to dangerous levels. In Bihar, often called the Sorrow of India due to the Kosi River's destructive tendencies, numerous districts in the northern part of the state were submerged, affecting millions of people and causing extensive damage to agriculture. In neighboring Uttar Pradesh, the situation was equally grim. The eastern regions bore the brunt of the flooding. The Terai regions bordering Nepal were also inundated. Rivers like the Gaghara breached their embankments in several places. Hundreds of villages were inundated. Families were forced to abandon their homes. She spoke of waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of rushing water. Within hours, her mud and thatch hut was completely submerged. The monsoon's fury in 2025 was not confined to the plains. The fragile Himalayan state of Himachal Pradesh witnessed a devastating series of landslides and flash floods, turning its picturesque landscapes into zones of death and destruction. The combination of intense rainfall and vulnerable steep slopes proved to be a lethal mix. The rains came down not as gentle showers, but as powerful, concentrated cloudbursts. These dumped an enormous amount of water in a very short time, oversaturating soils, triggering catastrophic landslides that swept away roads, homes, major transportation arteries. Vital highways connecting tourist hubs were repeatedly blocked by massive debris. Thousands of tourists and residents were stranded for days. Near Mandi, a landslide buried a section of highway, sweeping several vehicles. Rescue operations were perilous, hampered by unstable terrain and continuing rain. Local communities were hit hard. Terraced fields, carved over generations, were washed away. The neighboring state of Uttarakhand, often called Devbhoomi, or the land of the gods, has a tragic history of monsoon-related disasters. On the morning of August 5th, a devastating flash flood tore through the Uttarkashi district. The disaster struck with terrifying speed and force, catching residents completely off guard. The Kaya Ganga, a normally placid river, suddenly turned into a monstrous torrent of water, mud, boulders, laying waste to everything in its path. The epicenter of the destruction was Dharali village, a small settlement on the pilgrimage route to Gangotri Dham, sweeping away homes, shops, guest houses. The initial reports were chaotic, but it soon became clear that the toll was heavy. At least 5 people were confirmed dead, and more than 50 others were reported missing, feared buried under debris or washed away. The search and rescue operation was a race against time. Teams from the NDRF and SDRF working in treacherous conditions. Scientists began investigating possibilities including a glacial lake outburst flood or a glacier collapse. The monsoon's destructive journey continued northward into Jammu and Kashmir, a region that witnessed some of the most extreme weather events of the season. Jammu recorded 296 millimeters in 24 hours, breaking a record since 1973. Udhampur received an unprecedented 629.4 millimeters in a single day, an 84% surge over its previous all-time high. The downpour unleashed widespread chaos. Floodwaters smashed into bridges and washed away roads. The Jammu-Srinagar National Highway was severely damaged. Multiple landslides forced its closure, leaving over 2,000 vehicles stranded, including trucks carrying essential supplies. Rail services were badly hit with at least 18 trains cancelled on August 26. Tragically, the rains struck a revered pilgrimage route. On August 26, a massive landslide hit the path to Vaishno Devi. At least 34 pilgrims were killed and another 20 injured. The pilgrimage was suspended as rescue teams scrambled in. These events showed how climate change is amplifying disaster risks. The 2025 monsoon season left an indelible scar on the nation. The 2025 monsoon season left an indelible scar on the nation. The official death toll, which surpassed 1,200 people across India by the end of August, only tells part of the story. The official death toll only tells part of the story. Behind this number lie thousands of individual tragedies, livelihoods destroyed, futures cast into uncertainty. Millions of people were displaced from their homes, forced to live in crowded relief camps with inadequate sanitation and dwindling supplies. Forced to live in crowded relief camps with inadequate sanitation and dwindling supplies. Many were exposed to the risk of waterborne diseases and malnutrition. A volunteer in a relief camp in Bihar shared the story of an elderly man who had lost his entire family in the floods. He sat in a corner, staring blankly, a living embodiment of the profound and silent suffering that these disasters inflict upon the most vulnerable among us. The uniformed personnel of the National Disaster Response Force and the State Disaster Response Forces were at the forefront of the rescue efforts. They worked around the clock in extremely hazardous conditions, navigating treacherous currents and unstable slopes to save lives. Fishermen in Assam used their boats to rescue their neighbors. Young volunteers in Uttar Pradesh organized community kitchens to feed the displaced. In Uttarakhand, villagers worked alongside rescue teams, using their local knowledge of the terrain to help locate the missing. This collective response demonstrated the resilient spirit of India, proving that even in the darkest of times, the bonds of community and humanity can provide light and strength. While the immediate trigger for the 2025 monsoon disasters was extreme rainfall, the root causes run much deeper. A growing consensus among scientists and experts points to 2 interconnected culprits: global climate change and reckless, unplanned development. These forces have combined to dramatically increase India's vulnerability to natural hazards, turning seasonal weather events into full-blown catastrophes. Climate change is fundamentally altering the Indian monsoon. Global warming is causing the oceans and the atmosphere to heat up, allowing the air to hold more moisture. This leads to more intense and erratic rainfall patterns. In the rush for economic growth and tourism, vast stretches of mountains have been destabilized. Forests have been cleared, all often done without proper environmental impact assessments. ICMOD warns that extreme rain combined with weakened mountain slopes from melting permafrost and haphazard construction creates a recipe for disaster. The monsoon of 2025 has passed, but the waters have left behind a landscape of devastation and a series of hard-earned lessons that we cannot afford to ignore. We need to invest heavily in modern, localized weather forecasting systems that can provide early warnings for extreme rainfall events like cloudbursts, setting up community-led early warning systems and conducting regular drills. We must enforce stricter regulations for construction in ecologically sensitive zones and prioritize sustainability and resilience. This includes conducting thorough geological impact assessments and respecting the findings of these assessments. The lessons from this deluge must translate into concrete action. Action to reduce our carbon emissions, action to adapt our cities and villages to new climate realities, and action to protect our most vulnerable ecosystems. The future safety and prosperity of our nation depend on the choices we make today.